Hello, everyone. We are at the studio of CKO Digital, based in the great city of Houston, and we are Untitled Final, a bunch of designers talking about design things. Today, we'll be reviewing 3 rebrands that major corporations went through, give our thoughts on each, and how the public can have an influence on these major corporations. So the first one we're going to be starting off with is Gap. They went through a attempt of a rebrand back in 2010. It's almost 9 years ago now. But I do remember this happening when I was, I guess, 9 years younger, that it was such a weird thing and kind of like came out of nowhere. And the pretty much that proposed logo, I feel like had immediately like just bad backlash. What do y'all think? Or how'd y'all, I guess, like perceive it whenever it happened? Apparently Chris was too young to even.
I don't remember, but
Yeah.
He was a baby.
Yeah, I wasn't too young, but I just don't remember. I wasn't.
Mm.
Yeah, I do remember like going to the mall and seeing Gap everywhere, but I just don't remember seeing
Like it happening in
happening in real life.
Gotcha. I guess only heard it because I think at that point I wasn't like that interested in graphic design.
Right.
Or even really know what it
We
really
never-
was entirely, but I heard about it and I saw the new rendition of it, and I think even back then I looked at it, I was like, what are they doing? Why
Yeah.
is this a decision? Why does it look like this? Because honestly, like when I first saw it, I thought of like Windows or some kind of tech company,
Right.
super corporate looking, like absolutely nothing to do with lifestyle or apparel or anything that we kind of associate with Gap these days. And I feel like honestly their current logo, the one that they've always used, or at least like in my lifetime, is pretty iconic. I don't know, I feel like it's nationwide, probably worldwide, and to have this thing come out of nowhere was really weird. Because like even like looking through some research on like I guess like the reasoning behind they did it, it seemed like they honestly didn't really have a good reason to do it. They just did it. Like the higher ups decided that they were going to go this route. And yeah, what was even weirder is that like even within like like 10 days or something, they reverted it. Like
Yeah.
just because they got so much negative feedback.
It was only 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah, and looks nothing like them. I
Right.
think.
Right.
Mm-mm.
So I think it's like definitely, it's interesting that like companies can have like that much backlash to the point like where they just like revert and be like, oh my bad. Especially that quickly.
I know we talked about on last episode about how brands are kind of going more minimalist, more simple, just more sans serif. There's been a recent trend, maybe in the last, let's say, 5 years, maybe even more. But it might have been that they might have been done it too early. Like they might have been like, and they didn't quite execute it as well as they should have. Just because I mean the colors, they completely changed them to a gradient box and a black, which isn't really their colors.
Yeah, it doesn't fit at all.
Yeah, so they might have could have gotten away with it if they did it more recently and maybe done a better job.
Yeah. Like a much better job.
Right, but I think in 2010, that maybe that trend or that new wave of design wasn't really quite there yet.
It's just beginning. Like even all the fashion houses, like they're doing that too right now. Like in the past 2 years, I think, like Louis Vuitton and all those, like they're very similar to this Gap. Not very similar, but close to it.
Yeah, I mean they'll have like a sans serif version of like their name, but a lot of them like still have like their heritage because that's like they're like heritage brands type stuff. So I mean like within clothing, yeah, it does definitely like depend on like what side of the market you're on. So like Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, all that kind of stuff, like that's like high end luxury stuff. But Gap is like the common person type stuff, like you see at every single mall across the United States. And I guess you could kind of justify going like a more universal route just because of that. But even then, I feel like Gap, at least like from my perception of Gap, I always kind of see it as like a modern day Americana type thing where it's like super simple, like pieces, like button ups, pants, t-shirts, whatever. And I think Americana in general has a certain vernacular, like a certain visual language that I think like Gap still needs to have in its branding. Otherwise, if it loses it and goes very universal, then it's like then you're losing America. You're losing the American voice pretty much.
Right.
So I don't think like even if they were trying to hop or like be an early person on like this universal modern sans serif typeface trend or whatever, you know, I don't even think that is a good reason, honestly. Like
right, the reason itself, like we always talk about what are the reasonings for rebrands. some of the major ones are, a complete change in services, a merger, startup. It just depends on what the business decision is behind it. That's kind of like the main reason why things change. But just because of trends, or just because they want to, a lot of them are trying to do it as like a PR stunt, like how this article talks about it. It's just they just want to cause commotion. They just want to shake the.
Well, that was the thing. Like in the article, it was like some people were kind of speculating that it was a PR stunt, and then other people thought it was like intentional, that they actually wanted to try and go forward with this. But like the brand itself was never really clear on either of those, which is even more confusing. So it's like, it just sounds like some higher up was like, let's do this for no reason. So obviously, if you don't have a reason to rebrand, why are you doing it? So like right off the bat, like they're gonna fail. Which they crash and burn.
That definitely translates into branding and strategy. It's like, if you don't have a clear idea, clear reason why you're doing a rebrand or why you're doing a brand, it just falls apart. And you can see it here on a bigger scale, such as Gap, where they don't have a good reasoning behind the brand or the rebrand. So the public they don't really understand, branding or like graphic design or just the whole aesthetics stuff, but they do understand the reasoning behind and the concepts and the feelings that are associated with these brands. And you could tell right away that it just wasn't working.
I think maybe lucky for them, they did this in 2010 when social media was just starting. So like they were able to get like immediate feedback from just the United States, the globe, and just the general public. Because otherwise, if there wasn't that immediate feedback, they might have actually gone through this, and they might have like started throwing that thing up at all the locations, and people would be, I don't know how well that would do for the business, if they would lost money, gain money, who the hell knows. But I think having social media as like a public person is like good, because you could give this immediate reaction. Sometimes an immediate reaction isn't good because you don't understand the full context of it all. But like having these like at least like knee-jerk reactions of like good or bad can at least kind of give insight to the companies that are doing these things and be like, oh, maybe we should or we shouldn't do this. So definitely it was interesting seeing like how much of a negative feedback they got and just like how quickly they turned that thing around.
Do you think it would still be the same thing if like they did this 2010 branding like today, where there's like social media? Would it still be like very negative?
I think if they went with this, like their proposed one, I think they would still get a lot of negative feedback, even if we didn't see this back in 2010. Like it just doesn't look like what Gap is. Like it speaks a different language. It looks like, once again, like it looks like a tech company. It looks almost like an app. It looks like something like an off-brand of Windows. Like it doesn't fit what Gap is. It doesn't look anything remote like to apparel, clothing, Americana. Oh shit, my bad. I don't know if you need to cut that or not, but yeah, like it doesn't speak to anything related to like what it is that the business is,
Yeah, I think it has to have a good reasoning behind the rebrand, in order for it to work. Just period. Just any company out there, they just. I know last week we talked about Android, how they kind of did the whole rebrand based on their universal approach, which I mean, it works, especially in this era of like we're going into 2020, and the world is more connected than ever before. So why not the brands?
Yeah, I think that just adds more confusion to this whole situation with Gap, is that like they never gave a good reason. Like they just almost threw it out as like a test, was like, and then immediately everyone slapped it down.
Yeah, so I think that's why kind of these conspiracy theories kind of come up in terms of like, did they do it because it was a PR stunt? Are they trying to just cause commotion and just get attention? Which, I mean, a lot of it's up for debate, but it feels like they do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because they never came clear on either. Like we said earlier, is like if it was a PR stunt or not, or if it was intended with an actual goal. Like, but I feel like clear on any of these, or any of those points.
Like Gap, like why like the brand is just so conservative, just so like it's like it's just an kind of like a universal aesthetic of good just average clothes, which is like anybody could wear and look really good.
Right.
Why would they need to, some kind of?
I don't know. I mean, that's the biggest question that for some reason they never got around to answering. And on top of that, I also read that like the CEO who like immediately kind of like after all the backlash, the CEO put out like a statement on Twitter or something, trying to ask for like design specs or something from like the public. It was really weird. But shortly after she resigned, like 4 months later or something. So I don't know if she had like a big push in like why they did this, and maybe like board members or something saw that she was unfit to like be the CEO, so she had to resign. Like who really knows?
Right.
Like it's just a lot of mystery, and it was definitely like a weird thing to look back as like, wow, that happened. Like what?
Yeah.
It was
And
like
again,
an awkward moment for Gab.
Just to reiterate how important it is for the higher ups, CEO, the founder, to understand the goal of the overall brand. That trickles down into everything.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely a fail.
Total crash and burn on this one. But yeah, moving on to the next one. Unless y'all had anything else when it comes to Gap, Chris, do you want to say how much you love it?
No, I don't.
No, okay.
No, I mean I don't like it.
So yours, Gap.
Setting it clear. I
So
do
yeah,
not like this.
I
thing.
just think the one from before and now it's like iconic. So I don't think they should never change, or maybe if they do, it just might be something like slightly different. But that's just going to be them, I think.
Right.
Yeah, and another thing we can talk about is like how iconic brands, what's more important, heritage, or kind of like this anything new or any trend, like Coca-Cola, if they rebranded, how much would that affect the public and like their brand and their stocks and everything?
I think it would definitely come down to like what their reason was.
Right.
Because I mean, like Android, like we talked about in the last meeting, but the last podcast, like they're a international worldwide company that had billions of active products around the world, and even they like as I guess like just how much stuff they have out in the world and how like popular they are, like even them, they had to have a good reason in order to even touch their branding.
Right.
So like Coca-Cola, like I really don't know what their reasoning would have to be. Like they'd have to, because honestly, Coca-Cola logo and their branding in general is probably one of the most iconic brands next like Nike, like worldwide.
And I think it also depends on what market they're in, because Android, they came up with tech, and tech's always changing. So you can imagine them never changing, and then tech always changing.
Yeah,
so it's
true.
Like their trend is like changing.
That's a good point.
They're able to do that. But Coca-Cola is a drink that's been the same formula for decades. Unless the formula changes, which they try to do the whole Coke thing. They rebranded the Coca-Cola to just Coke. But they also got backlash. It was back in I don't remember what year.
There was also this one from sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but they left it as a sub brand for just that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I know a lot of the public was like, what are you doing?
Right.
The New Coke. I don't know if it's called New Coke, but
it's called the 80s.
Yeah,
it's like
they're in the 80s.
Coke. Is it a state? New Coke.
No, it's on Stranger Things. Like I wasn't watching it, but I was told that during the 80s they like came out with.
I think that was it. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So in the 80s they might have been. But they had
the name Neil, right? Neil. It was like
It might have been like the New Coke, and then they just left it.
Yeah, and
Coke
then
as a sub
people
brand.
were like confused what it meant.
Close to the mic.
What it meant, so they just like completely forgot about it or just removed it.
Yeah. So I think just the Coke itself has the very small logo Coke, but the whole overall brand is Coca-Cola.
Right.
Which they have tons of flavors, many flavors. I know.
Right. Apparently, you went to
Coke. In Vegas. I mean, they have that.
Yeah. What kind of stuff did they have there?
So
I was going to ask you.
They have some from Peru, from Japan, from Brazil.
So you can taste it.
Yeah. So you can taste every kind of Coke that they have. But it's not like, how they say Mexican Coke has different taste than the American Coke
because of the sugar that they probably use.
But theirs like completely different taste, completely different color, everything.
Color?
Yeah. So some of them are like green, some of them are like yellow.
It's like energy drinks almost.
Yeah, but it says Coke, right?
Wow.
I don't know if that's like the Coke over there. I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure it's just the same, the dark Coke everywhere.
Like
but
option.
they might have another option.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. All right. Did you want to move on to the next one, or
We'll move on.
yeah? Okay. All right. So next one we're gonna be going over is the IHOP. So this was an interesting one, just because the public hasn't seen anything like this before. It ended up not being a rebrand. Ended up being a whole marketing scheme. And just kind of give you all some backstory. In I think 2000, I forget what year. I think it was 2018. So last year, IHOP out of nowhere decided to completely change, I guess, almost their entire like business model and become IHOB, so International House of Burgers. Obviously, they've been iconic for their pancakes. There's their words in their name, and that's primarily what they sell. But out of nowhere, they decided to do this, and the public was super confused, and IHOP got a lot of backlash. They got a lot of marketing. Obviously, there's a lot of like retweets, a lot of follows that happen, a lot of engagement just because of all the backlash. That obviously IHOP in general just became a very big topic of conversation. But yeah, in general, like the public was confused and obviously very negative about like why are they doing this to IHOP? Like this is such a weird change of directions. But it ended up kind of being a whole marketing scheme and a whole kind of like bait and switch type thing. So essentially they're just like trolling the public. They didn't actually go through with it. Ended up just being what it is, a marketing campaign, and not an actual full rebrand. What were y'all's thoughts? Because this was recent, so you should be old enough to remember this one.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. I actually thought that they were going to like change.
Yeah, we did. I think everybody did.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, every time I would pass down 45 or the freeway, I was like, why haven't they kind of...
I was waiting for them to like turn the P.
I feel like they were just gonna keep that. Yeah. They were just gonna keep the same signage and just turn it and respray the sign.
That's pretty smart.
Would have faded away with the sun.
Yeah.
But I was like, I was just waiting and waiting money. Because I went to IHOB at that time and I saw the menus. It was just nothing but burgers. They had the menu, some of the signage. Not the physical signage, it was just the promotional signage. So like the posters, a couple of flyers here and there, and I was like, I don't want burgers. Like what?
Right.
Where are they here?
Where are the pancakes?
Yeah, I didn't even try them, but I did think that it was going to be a permanent change. I was just like,
yeah, that's
I accepted it as, you know, I was like, why would they ever do that? You know? I was like,
yeah, I think I had the same reaction too. Like I thought it was going to happen. But I was also waiting, just like drive by a sign and see it change finally, but then it never happened. And then at that point, aside from doing the research that we did leading up to this podcast, I didn't know that it was an actual marketing campaign. Right. I thought it was just like, oh, they just didn't go through with it. Right. I thought it was like a fail, like kind of the same thing that happened with Gap. They even have a Twitter, you know, a Twitter handle at IHOB, but it says, "Hey, y'all, pancakes, don't follow us here. We're at IHOP now." I feel like you were gonna say something, Chris.
I forgot.
You forgot? All right. That's fine.
Well, I just thought it, like, whenever it first came out, it just sounded so not stupid, but like IHOP. Like I was so used to IHOP.
It's hard to say IHOP.
Yeah.
Right?
It just sounds like you're joking or saying something weird.
Doesn't sound phonetically right.
Yeah, IHOP.
So a lot of names, especially in branding, they have to be very
Chris is calling it stupid.
Yeah, it has to roll off your tongue. It has to like, you have to say it.
Just get used to it.
Yeah, but IHOP,
IHOP, like it you almost miss the B, so it's like you're like, I don't hear the B as IHOP as much as like IHOP, because like IHOP has like a pop at the end of it. Right. But IHOP, yeah, even phonetically, like it doesn't sound good. So I think this is a company that works, that the whole marketing kind of strategy works for them, because they're more playful. They're more like, you know, they can always change their menus. They can always do whatever they want. And then it's like IHOP, they didn't come, like all they had to do literally was just grab that same P and just go, whoop, wait. Up. No. This is upside down, right?
So up.
I think you'd have to do some weird shit to get it right, but
you had to do something. But I mean, essentially, they didn't really change their brand. It was a pretty good kind of marketing kind of thing.
Like based on the research, it sounds like the marketing campaign was successful. They generated they pretty much generated a bunch of marketing campaign money that wouldn't have happened if they didn't do it. They got a stupid amount of engagement, whether it was good or bad. They got a lot. And even when it came down to the numbers of sales of burgers, which was their goal, because apparently they did this because they were putting out a new set of burgers and they want to drive traffic to the restaurant during lunch and dinner hours, because obviously they're known for their breakfast hours, but they're open 24 hours. So it's like they have like these like super high moments throughout a day, which is breakfast and probably brunch, and then it just crashes during lunch and dinner, and then it comes back up and it goes down. So they want to have more of like an even market throughout the rest of the entire day, since they're open the entire day. So they did want to highlight their burgers, and I think they even put out like a new series of burgers. But in order to do that, they came up with this like essential troll to kind of promote it and push it out. And they did sell more burgers. They did sell more, or they did have more people in the door like for dinner and lunch. So it worked. However, like, how do y'all feel about a company essentially kind of like being dishonest in like a marketing campaign like this? And then I guess like it whether or not it worked, like how do y'all feel about that kind of a strategy from a brand?
I think IHOP being a restaurant, like it helps. Like if it was some other, like maybe a shoe company, then I don't think it would have worked, because they would have to be more serious in a way. And IHOP doesn't really have to, and like whatever they say, like people might not like take it as serious as another brand. Like it's just a restaurant. Like that's what I think of it.
Right. I agree with Chris. I think it worked. It was okay to just do the whole flipperoo and be like, psych, like it's not, we're still pancakes. That kind of was like, oh good.
Right.
Like you just wanted me to try your burgers, like that's cool, I get it. I didn't try them. But maybe if they would have done a little bit longer, I would have.
Maybe. I think for me, like maybe it's just the way that I follow brands. Like I tend to respect brands more that are just honest in general. So like that's the kind of consumer that I am. So like whenever they did this and learning, like as I was reading this the other day of like why they did what they did, and the way I just felt like it was like a weird feeling the entire time I was reading everything. Like they're like intentionally being dishonest to the public and their audience to promote something just to make more money. I kind of see it like as a negative thing. And like, I mean, I wasn't an avid IHOP fan to begin with. Right. I mean, they're cool. Like at 3 a.m, they make great drunk food. So like, but at this point, like I haven't gone back to an IHOP in forever. Whether or not they would have done this, I'm not necessarily their market, but whenever I did read this and like see their reasoning, I was just kind of like, I was just turned off by it.
Right.
But that's just me. I mean, at the end of the day, they made more money. So I mean, it was a success to them. Congrats.
Yeah, but like, how long did that last? Like, by now, everyone already forgot.
Right.
They're probably back where they're at.
Maybe. I think that would be interesting to know.
Right. So it's like, you can do whatever kind of prank or whatever, but it's like April Fool's. It only lasts a day or short amount of time, and nobody really cares about. It's not a long term, solution. So that's something that they have to still address.
Right. It may still have like a long lasting effect. I'm not too sure. I know like it obviously had like an immediate effect of like positive, I guess, like money growth. But yeah, in the long term, I don't know. I haven't delved that deep into like how it's doing now.
Right.
I mean, I hope IHOP is doing good, selling a bunch of pancakes, but yeah, I don't know. I thought the entire thing was kind of weird. It was also like the fact that I haven't seen, or like the public in general hasn't seen a company do that either. So that in itself was pretty interesting, but I think just the idea behind it is what I wasn't comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that they would only do once. Like if they do it again, I think people would now get madder.
Right. I think they even teased something like that. I think sometime this year, like they just randomly put out a tweet of like what the P can mean or something like that, and like the feedback that they got was just like the public prince like trolled back and just like gave him like half-ass like just joking responses. So it's like if they did it again, like you already lost the trust of the audience and like taking you seriously. So I guess maybe that might be a long-term effect, honestly. Like, how do we trust you moving forward? I mean, maybe if it's like a small like reasonable sounding thing, we might be like more inclined to like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But if they try and do something this outlandish again, it's like the boy who cried wolf type thing, where it's like you keep fooling us. Like, why? We're not going to bite, or we might bite because the public bites at everything these days. But it's like you're not going to be taken seriously as a brand,
right? But I think on social media, social media has given a voice to a lot of people, and a lot of companies as well. So companies like Wendy's and Chick-fil-A and Popeyes, or so it doesn't have to be, their voice isn't as serious on social media than it is like on press or anything else, where they have to have a certain voice. They even go at it on social media and Twitter and stuff, like,
right. I think that's fine though, because like they have like a consistent personality that they're giving off through their social media and Twitter and stuff like that. Like that makes sense, because that's what brands, I think they have a personality that they attribute to themselves. They speak a certain way in press or in interviews or in their advertising. So as long as like they're consistent in that, like that's good. So like I think like what Wendy's does is good. Like whenever they have like that back and forth on their Twitter account is always good, and it's always pretty funny. But like this one, like IHOP, this thing came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think that was more. Yeah, that was very, like they had to spend a lot of money. It wasn't just a quick tweet where it wasn't, because it was
a
collateral. It was everything.
It was full
product. So they actually printed stuff and
it was it was
menus and stuff,
menus and
advertisement
and everything. That was just on one location that I went to. Imagine they had thousands of locations.
Yeah. So I mean, I imagine they made their money back and more based on how successful it was, which is good for them. But yeah, it was like another like weird moment of like where like the public had like a big discussion about a brand like all at once, and had like a big influence on how like the news was perceived, pretty much.
Right. And this happens across different platforms as well. So I know in movies, when movies send out a teaser, they send out a teaser like Sonic, and then the public was like, is that like an 8-year-old boy? It's just like, it's not. It's an animated character based on.
I've never seen anyone describe it as an 8-year-old boy.
It looked like it, right? Like,
I guess. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen an 8-year-old boy look that weird before.
Well, they talked about it as the monkey from Jumanji.
Oh my god, that was weird. Yeah. Okay, but that was like a nightmare-inducing character back in the day. Do you remember that? Like the live-action monkey?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Have you seen the old Jumanji?
And his tail was growing.
Oh
on
yeah,
VHS?
the monkey. Yeah, the boy monkey. Yeah.
Did that freak you out? Did that give you nightmares?
No.
It gave me fucking nightmares. I was terrified of that thing.
I
was like, that could happen.
Yeah.
I could fucking turn the monkey out of nowhere.
I think so.
What? Shut the fuck up.
I really enjoy those old video effects because they took real things and they made them do whatever, but you could feel them and touch them. Now everything is CGI, and the graphics are amazing. They look great, but they lose the texture. They lose the reality of stuff. But that's a whole different media genre, everything.
But definitely like that is another instance of like how the public opinion can have an immediate effect on a major decision. On, in this case, it's a movie, not a major corporation, but the company that's behind that movie is a major corporation,
right? And
they have to completely scrap what they did and completely redo, which I bet you they lost a shit ton of money. But it is interesting. I've never seen a movie do that. So this was the first time that I've seen like the public have that kind of influence on a movie. So we've seen it like happen in brands like with Gap. And I mean, IHOP that was a marketing campaign, so it was a little bit different. But in the case of like Sonic, like the public opinion was so bad that the company knew that they're going to just lose a bunch of money if they put it out as is. So they're going to go back, change it. And I mean, hopefully maybe at this point they break even, if anything, or maybe profit if they do it good this time around. So it's kind of like one big ass crit session with America and like the world, and they did not get good feedback.
I think that also kind of ties into the whole process of stuff like that. That's a big risk to put your stuff out there and have it be seen negatively before you launch. So I know here we do a lot of crits within the team before we even show it to the client or the public, just because it needs to go through the process before actually, so that's kind of different to have a public opinion be part of the process. So it's a risk. It's a risk that they have to take.
Something I always wondered though is like some of these decisions that we've seen, like in this case, like Gap and the Sonic mishap, is like it was so obvious that they were done bad. Like how did it get that far to the point of being like a fully produced movie or a fully launched branding logo?
That's another thing that I've seen from a lot of things, like politicians, movies, brands, things, albums, music. There's this video that just got launched on YouTube about like an alternate ending of Avengers, and the gauntlet was literally backwards on the other hand, and it's like how do you
so
miss
it wasn't
that?
even on right?
Right, it wasn't even on right, but it's like how do you miss something so obvious?
Right.
Or politicians like lie in your face, and like how do you do that? Or like brands do stuff like this, or Sonic. It's like it makes you question. Like I think it's just like a marketing thing as well.
I don't know if it's a
like,
marketing.
Or like
I don't know if it's a marketing thing.
They're
call
just not
attention. Call more attention beyond the conversation of what they're saying.
I don't know if it's that far. Like at least like to me, it kind of seems like it's either error in judgment or it's like it was just an accident.
Where like, accidents happen.
Yeah, and that's
like the whole cup with Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, like the Starbucks cup that was left in the scene or something. Yeah, like that kind of stuff happens. It's like we make accidents too as well.
It's
like
a glitch in the system,
typos or something like that. But like it's a little bit different to have like a typo in something, or like you leave a cup in a year's series that's aired every single week or whatever, you know. And you have like a slight mishap every once in a while, but like a full like logo being pushed out to
because this stuff takes weeks, months to do. Somebody had to catch it, Somebody had to,
or like at least like raise their hand and be like, this isn't looking good, or like this looks weird in the case of Sonic.
Sometimes like it's like somebody does say that and they just don't have enough voice to make any changes. It happens a lot too.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like the higher ups are the ones that make like the final decision. Like this is being pushed through, and I mean, hopefully, like in the case of Gap, like they can be reprimanded, like they can lose their job, they could receive just as much like negative flack for their crappy decision. So, I mean, which is good though, because I mean, people need to be held accountable for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure the designer or the design team was like, I told you it wasn't gonna work.
Right. Yeah.
I think it also helped that nobody really remembers that. They're still in business.
I don't remember. You're young. That's the thing.
Like, how old are you? Like 5?
Right? No, he was 15.
You do remember?
I remember the Gap thing.
2010, yeah.
Okay, it's just me then?
Yeah, it's literally just you.
You're still in high school.
You're still young. Yeah, you're still in high school. You're 15.
Little fish in the sea.
You're learning about yourself, all that kind of stuff.
All right, so I think we're done with IHOP.
Yeah, definitely kind of took a little bit of detour, but yeah. But yeah, the last one, kind of ending on a good note for sure. In terms of a major rebrands that a corporation did, someone who did it well and they had a great kind of goal behind it was Dunkin' Donuts, now labeled as or named Dunkin'. Just to kind of keep it shorter. But yeah, their overall goal was they realized that again, they were brands that listen to the market. They listen to what the audience is needing in these days, and what they notice is that the general public likes to have a very much like on the go type feel when it comes to like either drive-throughs or their morning routines, or even in between or throughout the day. They just want to stop somewhere, grab something, and just head out. And that was something that Dunkin' Donuts, or in this case Dunkin', acknowledged, and that was their overall goal for this entire kind of rebrand that they did. So they wanted to cater to this crowd that, or pretty much just a general audience that just wants to grab something, keep going. In this case, like coffees or small pastries. Obviously, that they're still primarily like a donut selling business. Like they're still the number one selling donut place in the United States, which was surprising. Yeah, I didn't know that either. I was like, God damn, congrats to them.
Probably because, well, here in Texas, I mean, every single state has kind of a different thing.
But Dunkin' Donuts exists here.
Yeah, right. But like,
is that the most known like Shipley's? I think.
No, Shipley's is the best.
Yeah, I think Shipley's is more of a Texas thing,
I'm just kidding.
right? So it's like Shipley's is more of a Texas thing, or
Yeah.
a Southern thing, and then like Whataburger, or like
Mhm.
you know. So sometimes, you know, as a Texan, you're like, oh yeah, this stuff's everywhere, and then you go somewhere else, and you're like, hey, can I, you know, where I can find a Whataburger,
Right, it
or
doesn't
Dr.
exist.
Pepper, or like sweet tea.
So it's almost like
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts was like the Starbucks of donuts.
Donuts.
Yeah. So because they're nationwide, like they're like the standard nationwide. But yeah, obviously like West Coast has like even in when it comes to donuts, like they have a like Welch's Donuts, I think that's what it's called, or Witchel's, something like that. Like back when I lived in LA.
No idea what you're talking about.
Like that was like their version of Shipley's. Like that was their brand that is like the most commonly known like locally within the state. I'm not sure how far that brand has like gone outside of California, but yeah, no, you're totally right. There are like these like very localized brands that have like locally they get the most attention from their locals and they sell the most there. But yeah, there are these bigger nationwide brands that sell number one above all, just because they're everywhere and they're so ubiquitous. But yeah, like in this case, they did want to cater to the new market of just grabbing and going, and they put out like new products. They rebranded everything. They repackaged everything. They shortened their name just to Dunkin', so that they didn't want to be limited just by having donuts in their name. As like, we only do this as their specialty. It's like, no, we want to broaden what we do as a service to everything. So changing or taking out donuts was definitely a smart move. I think Dunkin' itself is a great name in general. I think they even had like a great tagline, like American runs on Dunkin'. I think that's awesome. So they've already been like using that as like a thing for people to get used to. Not saying like the full name, just saying Dunkin', because even within the US, people are just describing it as Dunkin'. So I think this is definitely like a brand that listened well, and like they made like the appropriate changes, and they actually had a great goal behind it and kind of like followed through for sure. I feel like I said a lot.
So yeah, so brands like this, any brand has to plan for the future. And I think they definitely were able to do that from the beginning, to say, okay, we're Dunkin', and let's say 10 years, let's say there were Dunkin' Donuts, now we're just going to be Dunkin'. And here at CKO, we usually try to do that with clients. It's like, okay, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, yeah, your name is this plus another word, you know, are you always going to do that? Like, are you always going to be that, known as that? Or do you ever plan on, you know, changing the business, adding new services,
going nationwide, or going outside of Houston or the state of Texas?
Right. Yeah. So some brands are very limited to their name. But sometimes, like Dunkin' Donuts, if they're like, okay, in the first 20 years, we're just going to be Dunkin' Donuts, and then after that, we want to be Dunkin', or after that, like if they planned that out since the beginning, I mean, that's a great plan for growth.
Right.
But if they were able to say, okay, we're going to drop this, they creatively said, we're just going to keep Dunkin', and then we're going to drop these other two. Yeah. That's also a great thing to do from the creative marketing department, but that's a little bit harder to do if you don't have a plan from the beginning.
Well, I don't know like how long Dunkin's been around. I would be very surprised if this was their goal from like the very beginning.
They began in 1948.
That's a long time ago. I don't think people have a hindsight of 70, 80 plus years, TBH. But I think what's good is that companies can still like acknowledge and like listen to what's going on in the market and be like, then make adjustments. Like in the case of Android, like they made adjustments. In the case of Dunkin' Donuts, they made adjustments. So it's like just being in the moment is important. And that's what gave them longevity. So yeah, I would kind of backtracking a little bit. I would be surprised if this was their goal from the 40s.
Yeah, it's a matter of like they might have, they might not have. Most likely it wasn't. But yeah, what was I gonna say?
I think it's also that the name Dunkin' is like so catchy. Like, what if like Burger King removed the king? No, the burger from it.
Oh,
and it was just King. Like that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, King of what?
Yeah. Well, I think Burger King has its own kind of like,
because they sell like like so many things as well now, like tacos, and I don't know what else.
I feel like that's the worst. Whenever burger places start making tacos, they're such garbage
Really?
tacos every single time.
I
There's
saw
tacos?
I saw a commercial with like crunchy tacos.
Oh my god.
Or like using like Doritos as like the tortilla or some shit.
That's
That's
Taco
Taco
Bell.
Bell,
Yeah, I
the
know,
number
but
one Mexican
what is Taco
restaurant
Bell
in
Yeah.
America.
how does that make you all feel as Mexicans?
I mean,
I don't think so.
What does that say about America? It doesn't
Yeah.
really say much about me.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
But back to Dunkin' Donuts. So yeah, I was going to speak more about kind of like established brands. So they have to gain this credibility and this history in order for them to drop the donuts. They couldn't just come out and say we're Dunkin'.
Right.
What does that even mean? Right. Like we're right. So brands like Uber.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like Uber, Venmo. Like,
Yeah, but those words are very kind of universal. Very like they
I don't even know what they mean. Like
Right.
they have no actual connotation.
Right.
So it's like
yeah, but Dunkin', it's a verb, right? So
Yeah.
you're dunking.
Oh yeah, it's true. Like you're dunking
Oh,
a
I just
cookie
got
or
it.
a donut. Ah, me
I just
too.
What,
Yeah.
what do you think it meant?
I don't know. Maybe
I
like
didn't know.
someone's
I thought it was a
name
last
or
name.
something.
Yeah.
A what?
A last name?
Like that could be a last name, like Brett Duncan.
Yeah.
Like Dunkin'?
Yeah, but dunking
didn't
like
know
dunking
that.
a cookie or dunking a donut
Right.
into coffee like that. Sorry, we're retarded. We're really
I
stupid here.
didn't know that.
But I mean that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
because I was about to say like if like brands don't need to have or they don't need to like build like this long history of like getting their name out there for it to be like
Right.
immediately like noticeable and like usable.
Right.
Because there's like Venmo, there's Uber, like right out the gate, like people are like, oh, I need to get an Uber, or
Right.
I'm about to Uber too. So Uber replaced the word of driving, traveling, getting a ride. You know, Uber became like a noun, a
Right.
verb, all that kind of shit. Same with like Venmo. Like I need to Venmo you, so it's no longer I need to give you cash. I no longer need to make a transfer or something. I need to Venmo you. Like it's become its own thing. So
There's
definitely
different
the
ways.
names.
There's different ways of getting there.
mm-hmm,
You know, very good marketing, very good naming, but also heritage and longevity gives you that. McDonald's doesn't mean absolutely anything to
Right.
somebody that's never heard of McDonald's. Hey, you want to go to McDonald's? Like, what in the hell are you talking about?
right, like the first person that heard that, yeah.
Right. But now it's such a universal thing.
Yeah. So maybe like brands need to have, I don't know.
Like I said, there's different ways of
Sure.
arriving to that kind of like that established idea of a brand. Like what is that? You know, that feeling that everybody has of being recognized and being known for that. But I think definitely Dunkin' Donuts, they've been around for what, 60 years now? I mean, they're able to just say, oh, we're Dunkin'.
Right.
And everybody knows, oh, donuts, coffee, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. They did a great job for like everything from their naming to the colors also, in my opinion. I think they killed it. Like that bright ass like pink and the orange, I think work really, really well together. And like especially with the kind of foods that they offer. Like the pink like frosting or glaze on top of the donuts that they have, like that's very iconic for them. So I think they definitely from the top to bottom had a solid idea, a solid kind of goal for the entire thing, and they executed on everything from the naming of it to the colors to the logo.
And it's so minimal, the changes that they did, that the general public, you know, they've gone there for maybe 3-4 weeks, maybe a month, a year. They're like, they never notice the change.
Right.
And but the new people that are going in there, or somebody that the messaging kind of reached them, they're able to see the new branding and they're able to understand that they just don't do coffee and donuts.
Yeah. So I think this happens more so with like major corporations, is like them doing these like very minor gradual changes to their branding, kind of like how at like last week's or 2 weeks ago's podcast we talked about Android. Like they did very minimal changes to their branding. It wasn't like a Gap where they completely ditched everything about their existing branding and went a different direction. This case, like it was very small, and it seems like that's kind of like or the approach that major corporations take, just because they probably do worry about like the negative feedback that they would get from the general public. Because as an audience, as human beings, we hate change. So there's always going to be that negative kind of flag. Right. But if like the change isn't as drastic, like that probably is like not as, the public opinion isn't as drastic as well, because this is like a small thing. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand.
Right. And sometimes like the Gap one, like that was a completely whole different visual aesthetic. So that was a completely whole different kind of shift and stuff. Some of these brands still have the same core values, still have the same messaging, still have those same attributes, but they're just shifting maybe services, they're shifting maybe product. So their whole brand doesn't have to completely shift. And it shows, and you know, the public accept it because they're like, okay, you're adding this, you're adding a new service, and like, I understand that if you don't do this change, I won't understand that you're making this new service. So I think it's an overall benefit for everybody.
Yeah, very much received very, very well amongst the public. Honestly, I haven't been to Dunkin' Donuts in fucking years though. So
I've never been
either.
I've never been.
After
never been. Praising it all this time, we're like, nope, never been.
No, I've never been. Not gonna go.
Really? You wouldn't even try it?
Well, I have Shipley's and I have
Starbucks for coffee, and if you do get coffee.
Yeah, I usually just make my own.
Or make your own coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, like
I think it's here I'm a
Texas.
Kolache person. Just
Kolache
donuts.
Factory.
Yeah, just donuts don't do.
Kolache Factory is also a Texas thing.
Really?
Yeah, it started here, or I don't know if it started here in Austin, but it's a Texas thing. They have like the map outside like their store has like the different stars of like all their locations, and it's like it's all in Texas. I think they have like a few like in a couple different states, like nearby states.
But nothing in the north.
Nothing in the north, nothing in the east coast, nothing on the west coast.
I feel bad for them.
I know, dude. Kolache Factory.
But I mean, there are some Kolache places that are like mom and pop shops that I might be able to do that. But but Kolache, you know what to expect there whenever you're going. Like if I go out of town or if I go anywhere else, I'm like, oh, you know what to expect there.
I think it's definitely like another question of how like the public gravitates more towards like local things rather than national things. I guess it depends. Like Starbucks kills it for some reason. I mean, there's a good reason they do good products and they cater to
good
everyone.
Brand,
they're a great brand. But like in the case of like donuts here, like we gravitate towards Shipley's because that's like what some people, maybe Chris, who's born here, like what they gravitate towards because that's what they saw their entire life. Whereas Dunkin' was, they may not have been exposed to it that early, and then on top of that, it's just a national brand. It's not like a locals like this is ours, you know. So it's like, or in this case, like another case like Whataburger. Whataburger is ours, but now it's Chicago's, unfortunately.
Right. I don't go to Whataburger, but I feel proud that we have Whataburger.
Yeah, we got Whataburger. Well, I mean, I don't know why they decided to do that. It's just sad. We're not mad.
It's just investors. It's not that the headquarters
it's still
moved.
Here.
Yeah, it's still here. So, you still go down there and get a honey butter chicken biscuit.
The names are so Texan.
It is great. I mean, that's what gives us appeal too. I mean, that's what the audience is here. Like people have an accent, people have a slang, people have either, I don't know, have their own vernacular. So I mean, it makes sense. I think like these bigger corporations that are nationwide have to have like a much more like general voice rather than like either colloquial or like local type language or voice or message.
Right. But then that kind of goes back into like, okay, we're talking about Shipley's, but it doesn't compare to Dunkin' in terms of sales, in terms of, you know, growth. So Dunkin' was able to do it right in a way where they're able to grow.
Right.
And it also depends on the goals of the brand, but who wouldn't want to be a national brand, you know?
I mean, that really kind of depends on what your goal is of business, really. I mean, I could see some brands like wanting to stay local or wanting to only expand so far and like just be about this area because we love this area or something.
Yeah.
And then I could also see the other side is like, no, we want to blow up. We want to be everywhere.
Yeah, it also depends on.
Yeah. I mean, just as a business owner, as a direction as a business, I mean, that could change. Both are valid. You know, you can make bank either way. So, I don't know.
But I think they just did a really good job with like the name, the branding, like the small changes. I think they speak a lot, and I think they are gonna attract more new customers. Maybe not me, but
what would make you go there, Chris?
If he drove you there,
no.
would that really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
If what?
If we drove you there, if
Oh,
we
yeah.
literally
No.
transported your physical body
I guess
there,
if I was like
put you in
close
front of the
to
door,
it,
would
yeah.
you be like, still be like,
Put
nah,
it
I'm
in
good.
front of you.
Yeah.
But only that case, like you wouldn't go out of your way to go get it.
Yeah.
Do you know where there's one?
I just looked it up right now.
Does
I know
Chris
one, Bel Air, on Bel Air, Texas.
Mm,
I see that like often. I think that's the only one that I know of.
yeah, there's a couple in downtown apparently.
Really?
Well, actually, like west side of downtown.
I
But
don't
yeah,
see
like,
many. Maybe that's
yeah.
why I don't go.
That's another thing. Like, I know I see one whenever I head out to like Cypress or something.
Mm.
Like those listening to podcasts may not know where the hell we're talking about, but like
in
it's
different
like-
parts of areas of
yeah.
Houston. So in
Yeah.
the south and the
Mhm.
north,
mhm.
outside of the loop, outside of the metropolitan area.
Yeah, there's not
definitely
much.
a lot.
There's not much near inside the loop here in Houston.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the map. There's like 4.
Well, inside the loop, there isn't generally a lot of these corporate companies.
True. Yeah, that's actually interesting because like if you go to like the suburbs, you
Really?
see a lot more chains.
Right. There's a lot. Yeah.
never
I think
noticed.
I think that has to do with the city of Houston or how they kind of did it.
The
Mhm.
zoning.
That's just
thing.
that's what I think.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, it would make sense like if like the downtown metropolitan areas of cities like are often the most populated and have the most history.
Right.
So like a lot of smaller businesses got their foothold early. So it's harder for like a major corporation to like get into these areas just
Mhm.
because land is scarce
Right.
because it's already populated. Whereas like the suburbs, that's like expanding areas. So they're going into new land that hasn't been bought, manufactured, and built up. So it's easier for larger corporations to go to these areas and just like put up shop.
Right.
So that's
So
honestly probably why
every
you see
suburb there's like the same stores.
Yeah, you see everything. You
But
see
you
McDonald's.
come here into the
Carl's
metropolitan
Jr.,
area. I mean, it's hard for
Krispy
them.
Kreme.
Yeah.
There's only one Krispy Kreme. We're gonna get In-N-Out soon.
Yeah, I heard that.
I'm excited.
I'm actually excited too.
In-N-Out's so fucking good.
It's good.
I don't
yeah.
care
Where?
what Texans say.
Here in Houston.
Yeah, soon.
But yeah.
Do you know what In-N-Out is, Chris?
Have you ever
I feel like
gone?
Yeah.
like, do you even know what this is, Chris?
No, what
Or
is
are
that?
you
What is
too-
No, yeah, I know.
What is it?
Burger chain.
Burger what? Okay. It's a burger. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have anything else? I think overall, definitely touched on a couple or a few of these brands. Gap, IHOP being either bad or misleading. A lot of negative attention one way or the other. IHOP being successful in terms of like generating money, but Gap just being a total fail, and then doing it the right way, like Dunkin, who's listened to the market. They had a clear goal and they pretty much executed on everything. So it's interesting seeing how the public has a much bigger voice for sure these days with social media. I think it's a great tool that we have and definitely a game changer. And I do want to make that like a conversation at some point in a different podcast of like how much of a game changer is social media is just in everything.
Right.
And like it's really crazy to kind of think about and step back as like we live in a time where something exists that was such a game changer. It's like electricity when it first happens. Like what? I could see myself when I actually go to the restroom now. This is crazy.
Yeah, I think that we won't get into it just because
right.
We'll save it for the next
we'll save it for another time. But yeah, thank you all everyone for tuning in to Untitled Final. We put out podcasts bi-weekly, so catch us in 2 weeks. We'll be putting out this podcast on YouTube, I think iTunes
and Spotify.
So yeah, check us out on all of those. We'll have all the links to those on our social media. So yeah, follow us, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.